Assalamu alaikum. I'm Yaaseen Barnes, and this is the Muslims Connected podcast, the podcast for those looking for inspiration and growth in their lives. Today, we are joined by a youth leader, someone who's changing the world every day by the work that he's doing across the world. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam. Youth leader sounds like the ANC. I feel like you introduced me like Julius Malema.
Yo, you're kind of changing the world. You're getting the land back, Mr. Yusuf Omar, everybody.
Getting the stories back, getting the narrative back, getting the media back.
For the people.
Yeah. But this is back. I don't think we ever had it.
That's actually very true.
Yeah.
We're doing the work across the world. But before we go across the world, let's start with you as a person, because you're a leader, right? Have you accepted the position as you are now as a leader for the people?
Yeah, I've currently got 55 people in our company reporting into me, which is a terrible idea. But yeah, I'm having to play leader for sure.
And so as a leader, who was your first leaders? Who were you? Who did you see as, I'll say, growing up that made an impact for your future going, that you must take charge of your own and lead for the others as well?
I suppose that first point of privilege is your parents, right? And if you have employed parents, and if your parents are particularly innovative, in the case of mine, they were. My dad's family are from Johannesburg, my mom's family are from Durban. But at the age of 3, my dad's family, when he was 3, moved to the UK. And they grew up there. And I grew up above my dad's dentist surgery. He was a dentist. Mom was pretending to be a receptionist and nurse. And I grew up in that environment. But what was really interesting is my dad had the first paper-free dental surgery in the UK.
Wow.
As in, back in the days, everything was with paper.
Yeah.
Write notes on what the patient had, or you'd have to have a printed out x-ray. And he went paper-free. He went all digital. And I guess that was at least an innovation leader.
Yeah.
And then his brother, another Yusuf, Uncle Yusuf, was a doctor and an anesthetist. And he wanted to be able to take calls from outside of home before cell phones were invented. So he set up a big satellite on the top of, or an antenna on the top of his house, and another one on his car. And he had a battery the size of a suitcase. And he could take phone calls but within 2 kilometers of his house before mobile phones were invented.
That's amazing.
Really cool, right? So that's my dad's brother, who's also that's innovative, and that's a form of technological leadership.
Yeah.
So I think I come from a huge position of privilege of being surrounded by these people trying to make a plan with technology, and accepting, adopting technology, and being surrounded by it very early on.
But also not using technology to its limit. They went past the limit for what is accessible at the time.
Yeah, exactly. Saying, well, exactly. And then also at a time when people, you must remember, people at a particular time in history didn't even know why they'd need a cell phone. Why the hell do you need to take calls all the time? How important do you think you are that you need to be available online?
Yeah.
Or on a phone call? And then in a community sense, my mom's grandfather, based in Durban, his name was Suleiman Mutala. He was a community leader. He was the guy that, there's that guy at the front of the mosque that shakes everybody's hand. That's him.
Yeah.
And when you're raising funds for the broken roof, that's him. And he was building business models around the mosque. He built this whole array of businesses and infrastructure beside the mosque so that they could rent out that space, so that the mosque didn't have to beg for funds. They could just get the rent from the properties next door.
Wow.
And I think what I learned from him as a community leader was people would come to him with their problems. Going through divorce, need some advice, struggling with a business. So that was really interesting. So kind of on my father's side is professional, technological leadership. And on my mother's side is community-oriented leadership around that mosque structure.
So where did you, and then you went to go study journalism?
Yeah, I initially studied marketing management. Like any middle class person that doesn't know what they want to do.
Same.
Yeah. Ended up in New York City, Times Square, looking at the big billboards. And I remember just as I graduated, I'm in the mecca of marketing. And I look up and I see an ad for jockey underpants.
Yeah.
Tighty whities.
The Calvin Kleins.
Exactly. Ripped, six-pack. And in that second, I realized I didn't want to do marketing anymore. Because that effectively in some way would have been my job, to sell people stuff that they didn't need. if you want to be this man, you wear these underpants and
Yeah.
get this girl. And I was like, so then I started applying for everything. I didn't know what I wanted to do in life. And by complete, as they say in South Africa, fluke,
Yeah.
I got a scholarship to study journalism at Grahamstown in South Africa.
Makanda. Nice.
Right. And that's why I moved to South Africa. And that's where my kind of entry to journalism began.
So you because I think when you're in marketing, you're also exposed to so much of the world.
Yeah.
You get to see different types of people because you have to apply every product to every kind of, I'll say, demographic.
Mm-hmm.
Is that something that you, like, I'll say, learned and carried on now through into your journalism as well?
Oh, for sure. Like, marketing and journalism are both the art of telling stories and creating empathy or connection. The only difference is that marketers make money and journalists don't. But at its core, it's the same skill.
Yeah.
To convey a story.
And then journalism, you go from, I'll say, Makanda, from Grahamstown, and then where does it take you from there? Where do you go from there?
Yeah, so South Africa is an amazing place to dig your teeth into journalism because there's so much stuff happening.
Yeah.
Right? Like, as a junior journalist, you are covering crime and labor issues and mind violence and protests and Marikana and Nelson Mandela passing. And, like, it's just a really, like, it'd be so hard to be a young journalist in Australia where nothing happens. Right? This place is full of stories and full of life. And even the small stories for a junior journalist is still a pretty big stories.
Juicy.
Yeah, it's super juicy and super colorful. There's stories on every corner here due to our gross inequality, right? And also innovation.
Yeah.
Like, we're make a plan kind of culture. People in the most difficult of circumstances are quite resilient here.
Yeah.
So there's tons of stories. I dig my teeth into that and end up going through independent newspapers. Started off at the Cape Times and the Cape Argus here in Cape Town, ended up moving to Sunday Tribune in Durban, and finally end up at the Star newspaper in Johannesburg. It's like old school. There's a printing press in the basement for 5 stories.
So you toured the country through journalism.
Yeah, 100%. And journalism is a cool job because you jump in and out of different lives. One night you are doing you're embedded with the police. The next, or when the xenophobic uprisings were happening, we were with the military, going from hostile to hostile, trying to solve and figure out that kind of stuff. And you get this weird fly on the wall approach to life where you get to be on a fly on the wall in those weird environments. And you're like, okay, today's the life of a soldier. Tomorrow's life of a police officer. Now I'm an ambulance. Now I'm with an ambulance driver. Now I'm with a politician. Now I'm with a celebrity. So weird. But you get to see South Africa across so many layers. And it's weird. Like, you can be in the most unsafe area, but you're there for a purpose, so you're kind of safer.
Yes.
Like, if you were just walking in this, like, random part of town and it's really unsafe and you're there for no reason, it's kind of weird. But if you're there with a tripod and a camera crew and it's like, oh no, we're documenting, so it's like, oh, they're here for something. Like, so there was a bit of at least perceived safety that came with purpose and cause.
But I think also as a journalist, you stand with purpose. Yeah. So people don't see you as someone that's just coming to, I'll say, just watch the people. You're coming to actually hear their actual stories. So I feel like people also...
You are offering service.
Yeah.
And, like, especially in a country like South Africa, where people are so unseen and so unheard that they often have to resort to sometimes even violent forms of protest to be heard and seen and be able to give them a microphone and lights and a camera and you distribute it to millions of people, because I eventually ended up moving to, like, ETV, etc. That's a privilege, a responsibility, and it's a beautiful thing to be able to give people that moment, because when they don't have that, in a city like Cape Town, we saw the food protest.
Yeah.
Where people had so little access to service delivery, they had to literally take their own human waste and pour it out over the international airport. Say, look at me, listen to me, you're not listening, right? Or you have to burn down your local school or library to say, you're not paying attention. Like, I don't know how else to get your attention. Yeah, so it's I think it's a result of a significant disconnect between the people that make up your newsrooms, and the people that make up your population.
So just for the first part of the podcast, I just want to, I'll say, feel your story out from where. So you go from journalism from ETV, I'll say a national broadcaster, and then you move to CNN.
Yeah, well, there's a couple of steps. Straight out of university, I want to be a foreign correspondent. I'm like, yo, I want to cover wars and travel the world.
Nice.
Every user in my house was like, nah, too young. We don't have budget. You're not experienced enough. So straight out of university, I actually started a trip. I hitchhiked from South Africa to Syria.
Wow.
Durban to Damascus, 12,000 kilometers, just catching rides and going up the coast of Africa. Mozambique, Malawi, Tanzania, Kenya. And that was a really amazing trip because I really learned that the narrative of Africa is not as it was perceived. You know, the narrative of Africa in mainstream media is blood diamond.
Yeah.
It's child soldiers and
bad impersonations.
Yeah, exactly. Bad impersonations and extreme poverty and rebels. And the reality was South Africa was the most dangerous place I went to. Everywhere else was like amazing. They were all like, from Joburg? That sounds terrifying. And it was stunning. Like Lake Malawi was stunning. And, you know, Mozambique, the food was unreal. And Zanzibar saw the best beaches I'd seen in the world.
You also saw them as a person. You didn't see them as a tourist.
Yeah, as a person catching rides every day, not knowing where the hell I was going to sleep every night, staying in people, sleeping on park benches and in church and mosques and finding random people and staying at their houses. And yeah, they're a totally different kind of vantage point. Yeah. And as a single traveler hitchhiking, people feel sorry for you. Like, they're not intimidated to be like, they're like, yo, you look a bit lost. You want to come home?
They just treat you nicer.
Yes, I learned a lot about the kindness of the African continent. I learned that we haven't lost our humanity and distrust in our fellow human beings. I learned a lot about community. I do this hectic trip. I end up in Egypt. It so happens that the Arab Spring kicks off. I end up filming that.
Perfect timing.
Yeah, right place, wrong time. And that's a trend that tended to keep happening to me as a journalist. Come back to South Africa. Now I'm living in Houghton, very Lani part of South Africa, and it just didn't feel real. So within a couple of months, I got an apartment, or not apartment, I got a little room in Soweto. And I moved out to Soweto. And that was like, I think I was paying like, maybe like, I want to say like 400 Rand a month.
Wow.
And it was like a room with like 20 other rooms, one bathroom, a shebeen in the middle, rats on the roof at the night. But all of these experiences challenged my understanding of the African continent. Like my experience in Soweto, I felt so safe because I was so close to my neighbors. Like in rich suburbs, you scream, nobody's coming. Here, like you scream and somebody's right next door to you. So a lot of my life has been built not so much on like academic learnings, but on very real human experiences. Ended up 2012 going to Congo with Gift to the Givers. That's when I started strapping cameras to my body, a camera strap to my head, camera strap to my chest. 2014, we got smuggled into Syria with Gift to the Givers and a group of doctors building a hospital out there. So it's been lots and lots of experiences.
And then you also, I'll say, adopted social media from a young age out in your career, at least, of just sticking to social media and not sticking to it, but like knowing the worth of it before the wave started, you were part of it.
Yeah, so at ETB here in South Africa, I realized very early on that a mobile phone could capture pretty good content. So we ended up hiring like predominantly like 12 young Black South Africans. We set up a boot camp. We gave them phones and we said, yo, don't stay in the office. Go out, shoot stuff. And that's when I realized, wow, communities and people from marginalized backgrounds with mobile phones can bring us really rich stories. I then I moved out to India where I work at the Hindustan Times under Nick Doors, fantastic boss and leader. And there I had to train up 750 journalists how to tell stories with phones.
Wow.
Across like 27 offices. And there I realized, okay, wow, this can scale. You can have lots of people with mobile phones telling stories. You get access to really unique content from around the country in that case. Then I get offered a job at CNN International and move out to London. Now I'm working on Snapchat. Now I start to learn, okay, how do you go viral? How do you grab Americans and international audience attention? How do you monetize on platforms like social media? And I think you sometimes don't realize when you're on the journey that you're picking up skills. But when you patch all those skills together, they formulate a bigger idea. And that's kind of where we started to move towards. We could spend our whole lives trying to fix old other media companies, or you can build your own one. So we decided to build our own one.
Nice. So what year is this where we start seeing TV?
This is like 2016, 2017. And just to give you context, Donald Trump has just won the US elections. Brexit has just happened in the UK. These are two of the biggest stories of all time. Traditional media missed both of them. Nobody in traditional media thought Trump was going to win. Nobody in traditional media thought Brexit was going to happen. And the reason for that is they weren't listening to real people and real stories on the ground. They're all about experts and pundits and commentators and analysts. And predominantly those folks were disconnected from the realities on the ground. So we were like, yo, what if you trained people how to tell their own story? And what if you had journalists curate that content into professional quality growth? And everyone laughed at us. There was a famous interview with the editor of the BBC's political division, Nick Robinson, and he said, selfie journalism isn't journalism. I would rather die than do what you do. But it's not journalism. Journalism is finding things out.
And he told you this?
To my face on a live audience of hundreds of people at a journalism conference. And, when somebody pushes back on your idea, and so many times in life people, whether it's your parents or family or an expert, say, yo, that's never going to work. You can either confront that from like, they're right, I evolve. Or for us, it was like a whoa, they don't know. They don't get it. And we get it. It got me, it got Samaya and I even more excited. Samaya, my co-founder, she actually launched the company, and of course she's my wife as well. We got excited by people shutting down our idea.
Nice.
It emphasized how big the gap was, how disconnected they were. And we were like, wow, we got to run really fast and build something.
And so you're training, I'll say, thousands of people.
Yeah, we did 20,000 people across over 100 countries. We traveled everywhere. We went to Korea, Colombia, all over the world, training thousands of people how to tell stories with their phones.
So what are some of like the keys, the key leadership, I'll say, techniques that you've learned, that that you learned, or just something that you picked up, that how to, I'll say, get the story across so that they buy into the idea that you're trying to teach them? Does it make sense?
I think the first thing, if you're going to teach anyone anything, is what value does this have in my life? And in the context of teaching people how to tell stories with their phones and create, viral videos, you've got to be able to help them understand this could help you promote your business. This could help you promote somebody else's business. This could help you start shooting wedding videos if you live in a village in Kenya and create a revenue stream. This could help you if you've got a service delivery problem, like the taps haven't been fixed in your community for months and nobody's listening to you. You can make some noise about this. So I think at its core, if you're going to teach somebody anything, it starts by up top expressing we're all quite selfish. So what's the value proposition for you? How's this going to improve your life? And in the context of video making nowadays, people don't just want a resume, they want a video CV.
Yeah.
People don't just want an Instagram ad, they want a video ad. So helping people understand that the majority of the internet's traffic is video, like over 60, 70% of the internet is video. That's the first step towards getting their buy-in.
So then, so Scene TV comes in, Scene TV takes off across the world. Now with Palestine that comes in, and how do you connect to Palestinians? Were you in Palestine before, before 7th of October?
Yeah, I've had the privilege of being invited to the West Bank, Palestine, multiple times in the context of communities that wanted to learn to tell stories. I think the Palestinian people realized a long time ago that they couldn't rely on traditional media to tell their story. So they had to take ownership of that themselves. And we went there on a few different missions with the objective of creating as many creators and influencers as possible. And I think that's where our relationship started with Palestine. I've had a chance to see a lot. I've had the chance to see IDF soldiers fighting children with, bullets coming one way and rocks throwing the other. I've had the opportunity to see my wife stuck at a checkpoint and not being able to get her out of that position. I've had the opportunity to see the good stuff too, see the startup culture and the maker spaces and the creative labs and the innovation and the game developers and the kids learning to code. And I've managed to see that glimpse of hope that despite the circumstances, there are people there that have such a hustle culture that they make it happen. And there's this beautiful phrase that I picked up in Palestine that existence is resistance. Existence is resistance. And that means that despite the occupation, despite every effort by this right-wing Israeli regime to curtail their most basic human freedoms, their ability to have a hipster coffee shop with a croissant is a form of resistance. Yeah. Their ability to throw a house party is a form of resistance. And that's such a cool idea. It's like basically saying that me just living, despite everything you're trying to do to stop me living here and to stop me vibing, just me vibing is a form of resistance.
That's amazing, actually. Also, just they also live normal lives, and I think that's also the thing that them and what's seen got to show the world is that they're not just.
It's so important to communicate that because it humanizes. I think traditional media often positions places like Palestine and Syria and all these parts of the world as like, oh no, these are a group of Arab folks that have always lived in rubble and they're intense and. It's like, no, like, yes, the occupation sucks, absolutely sucks. Their life could be so much better. But there are also people that watch Netflix and that, might have a car and that are, might have a girlfriend and like
barbers, funny barbers, I'll say.
Funny barbers.
I've seen in the documentary.
Yeah, and then when you lose that nuance, you stop humanizing people and then they don't become relatable, right? You're just like, that's a bunch of sandy people in the desert. It's like, no, they're actually way more like you than they are not like you.
Yeah.
So that's why a lot of the stories that we do don't just come from a point of pity, right? You can be like, oh, feel sorry for people, and we should do that. But you should also be like, oh, that's such a funny dude.
Yeah.
Or like, oh, that's such a smart dude.
It's a person.
Yeah, it's a person, and it's a person that I could vibe with and be friends with.
Yes.
And I could learn from, and I could laugh with, and we could have dinner together.
So then you have Ahmed on board?
Ahmed I've known for years. So Ahmed is basically this kid that for basically the last few years has been inboxing me on social. Almost and initially annoying. Like, who is this kid? What does he want? And he's just sending me videos of Gaza, the historical sites and the culture, the music, the food, language, all this kind of stuff. And I watched this kid grow up as this aspiring creator, but it's almost quite a depressing story because he wants to be a travel blogger, but being from Gaza, he can't really travel very much. Yeah. So he just decides to travel internally. But I was like, this is cool. This is somebody who's again, existence is resistance. All right, Israel, you don't want me to travel abroad? I'll make videos in here. You want to paint Gaza as this place with no hope? I'll show you that we got vibes as well. So yeah, that's how we first meet.
And then, so now I'll say since the genocide started, at what point? Because you came up with the idea for the movie, for the full collection of the stories, things we have seen, things we haven't seen as well that he's posted. When do you realize this the story is a whole story and not just I'll say the short bits that you've seen on social media?
Yeah, it's really interesting, this evolution from individual short reels or TikTok videos into a standalone piece of film or a narrative. I think very early on, we started to see Ahmed's story and other people from Gaza as being part of a sequential narrative or series because the nature of their struggles are changing all the time.
Yeah.
It went from oh shit, Israel are bombing and there's lots of refugees coming my way. So oh shit, now they're bombing my house. So oh shit, now I'm a refugee. So oh shit, now we're looking for a tent. Okay, now we found a tent. Now we're looking for food. Now we found food. Now somebody's injured and we need it was just a continuously evolving thing. And we saw audiences coming back and then eventually coming back and saying, yo, we haven't heard from him in 2 days. Is he okay? He isn't posted to his Instagram. So there's the suspense of millions of people pegged to, is he okay? Is he alive? What's happening next? And I think the nature of this fleeing, which is really what all people in Gaza are effectively doing, right? They're moving from one unsafe place to another unsafe place because there's no unsafe place. That's a sequential journey. But I don't think the story ends. We've done a film now, Ahmed Alive, and we use that to raise funds for content creators in Palestine. But we see it as part of a much bigger thing. We think we're going to do a live series with other Palestinians. because they've all got similar stories, right?
Yeah.
We showcased this in Cape Town, and a bunch of people stood up and said, "Me too. I'm from Palestine, and I've got the same experience. I can relate to this." And then I think the next chapter is like, okay, well, what next? Like, Ahmed's trying to get his family out. Every day he wakes up wondering if they're still alive. Eventually go back in. Eventually, we see the ability for Ahmed to work with us on the world's first storytelling university, where Ahmed becomes a professor, where Motaz becomes a professor. We heard it from Dr. Imtiaz Suleiman and many others. This battle will not be won with guns or bullets or aircraft carriers. It is a narrative battle. And narratives are won with stories. And we can't rely on traditional media to do those stories in an accurate or fair way. We were going to have to rely on what we've relied on throughout this 6 months, and that's people who are sharing their lived experience. So I think we've got a huge responsibility to empower more people to tell more stories, get them really great internet connections, get them really great mobile devices, help them structure, help them achieve virality, train the next generation of journalists. We've seen so many journalists lose their lives.
Yeah.
People think this stuff is fluff. It's like, yeah, that's so cute, but that's not the really important stuff. It's the most important stuff. What else matters right now other than convincing billions of people around the world, and especially millions of people in the US and Western Europe, around the plight of the Palestinians and that the occupation is wrong? Nothing else matters. Like, literally, storytelling is the singular most important thing that can bring about change. It's everything. Beyond, like, immediately housing and feeding people, for long systemic change, storytelling is everything.
It's a big responsibility that you've, I'll say, taken on with your company, but also as a young company, you took on the West. You with the clear stance of you pro-Palestine, that we're telling the story of Palestinians. Was that also a fight that you took on as well now during this time?
I hope that we are anti-hate,
yeah,
and anti-apartheid, and pro-love, period.
Yeah.
Like, I think sometimes our content, even to this Muslim audience, is slightly confusing, because they'll watch us and they'll be like, okay, cool, you are clearly celebrating the lives of Palestinians and fighting an occupation. And then they'll see a story from the LGBTQI community. I'll say, yo, but wait a minute. And that's exactly the role of CNTV. We are there for marginalized communities. We believe if somebody from the LGBTQI community is spat on or beaten up at school, we believe that's inherently wrong to attack that person because of how they identify. So I think in this instance, we are positioned as being, allied with the Palestinian liberation struggle. And we do think it is a liberation struggle that will be looked back on our history as the right thing, as being on the right side of history. But more broadly, we're building a media organization for the unseen and by highlighting their stories, especially where we see people that are oppressed, that are hurt, that are receiving hate.
And then you've now started CNTV Palestine?
Started CNTV Palestine. We've identified with Ahmed 30 content creators, and we just need to supercharge them now. It's not cheap. We've spent $100,000, almost 2 million rands since October 7, helping Palestinians tell stories. So we've got to pay those Palestinians. Yeah. We're going to pay video editors. We're going to pay producers to get in touch. Sometimes we're going to provide internet to get help, eSIMs to get that content out. And it's not sustainable. You're not going to get branded deals. It's not going to be like, oh, Nando's going to be like, oh, yeah, I'll sponsor your Gaza series. You're not going to earn programmatic ad revenue on about, social media. So we're now saying, okay, is there a patronage model here? Is there a world in which citizens who believe that there is a subject that requires more attention will fund journalism being produced from that region? And then can we give those citizens varying degrees of control? Like, can I say, yo, Yaaseen, you're sponsoring See Palestine. What are you interested in? Are you interested in stories about women, youth, healthcare, education? Do you want to look at innovation? Which of these storytellers are you interested in sponsoring? Or maybe you don't want that control. Maybe you're just like, yo, I'm just here to help. But to those that do, I want to be able to support you. And that extends beyond See Palestine. We're going to try it out with Palestine. And inshallah, I hope it works. It's not even a big ask. We need $500,000 to do 365 stories every single day. We never forget Palestine. But if that's successful, where else can we apply that model? The Uyghur story. totally ignored, totally forgotten.
Yeah.
Doesn't make business sense for traditional media organizations to do. It's really hard to do, to be honest. Like, can we get a critical mass of people who are like, yo, tell the weakest story? If we do achieve that, what an exciting future for journalism, where we don't have to rely on branded content funds, where we don't have to do clickbaity stuff that just gets clicks, where we can actually do stories that matter, supported directly by the audience. Like, that's a really exciting future.
It's also told from the truth of the person. It's the lived experience. Because when we see the stories from, I'll say from Palestine, it's that actual person. It's not a journalist detailing what someone else said or what someone else saw and on a whoa. It's exactly the lived experience. So I think that's I'll say another great approach that you guys have taken.
Traditional media see themselves as the sole arbiters of truth. We're the only ones that can tell you what's up, and we're going to send this correspondent and say, coming to you live from, in this case, Tel Aviv, where we're witnessing this, and when we speak to somebody, it's like, why don't we speak directly to somebody?
Yeah.
And the counter-argument is, well, that person's not a journalist. How do we know they're telling the truth? Yes, they're not a journalist, but can they be a reporter? Can they report the stuff that they see? Absolutely. Then couple it with journalism. Have a journalist that fact checks. He says, yes, that's a real person. Yes, they really made this video. Yes, they did it at this location like they said they did. And the other challenge is when a citizen reports something, is it objective? Is it objective? Are they objective? Is Ahmed objectively reporting on Gaza? Obviously not. His house got bombed when he was 14 years old, and again now. He's not objective. He's incredibly subjective. He's incredibly emotional. Does that mean that his story is not of value? No. It's our job as journalists to contextualize that story. But I don't believe because his lived experience gives him a particular bias or a position on the world that voice is not valuable. It's super valuable.
Yeah.
And I think that's what traditional media miss sometimes. And the reality of it is, like, often people think if there's a fire taking place behind us here, or actually a better reference is water. If there was a ferry sinking here right now, do you trust one traditional camera to show us that fire? Or would you trust every single apartment building here, all with mobile phones on the same fire or the same ferry going down?
Yeah.
Which one would you trust?
The phone.
You trust it because there's so many of them too.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I can manipulate one camera. That's easy.
But all mistakes.
Try 300 phones, all one ferry going down. That's pretty hard to manipulate.
Yeah.
Especially if we can use technology to be like, oh, all those phones are verified accounts. They're real people. We've got like tons of different perspectives on this ferry going down. So, like, the future of journalism is not journalists on the ground with mobile phone. The future of journalism is not journalists on the ground documenting realities. Some of it will be that. Most of it will be citizens. Citizens will get the stories first. They'll see it first. They'll report it first. The role of journalists will increasingly go to verification, fact-checking, making sense of it all. And hopefully give you more context and insights.
It's a thing of, it's also jobs that hasn't been created yet. In terms of, like, I'll say the new style of journalism wasn't what a journalist was 5 years ago. And I feel like 10 years ago, that was a different person.
Yeah. And I see it as a threat. But why? Like, surely more sources and more information makes your journalism better.
Yeah.
You know?
But also, again, I'll say traditional, when they use a camera, there's so many people that must sign off on the content before it gets to the screen. And then
like a big series of Zs.
Yeah. And now it's 2 people.
Yeah.
One person must film it and then post it, and that's the truth that happens. Through.
Yeah. And obviously, with this democratization of media, there is the opportunity for bad actors, right? For people to make things up, for false information. But does that mean that there wasn't false information during traditional media's time, right? Where a government can say, Iraq has weapons of mass destruction, and the media just go with it, right? And they convince the entire population that it's a good idea to invade Iraq on this false premise. Like, the notion that fake news only emerged with the advent of citizen journalism is just plain out wrong.
Was it Wag the Dog? The movie? There was a movie about basically how they faked so many war scenes where there was in a fake country, they made a fake war, and everybody just believed it because that's what we saw. That's what the news gave us.
The thing is, Gaza has completely changed the world in such a fundamental way. I don't think the West realized how much October 7 has changed everything.
Yeah.
On one side, we've seen the gross hypocrisy of traditional media. We've seen the way that they will call an Israeli killed and a Palestinian died.
Yeah.
Right? Small language, big difference. On a geopolitical level, we've seen world governments literally throw entire populations under the bus. And that veneer has come right off. Like that whole veneer of like, we care about human rights around the world. It's like your values and what you say your values are and what your international actions are don't match. I mean, the U.S. today is a perfect example of that, where they're providing the bombs and the food.
Yeah.
Right? It's like,
what do you really want peace? What do you actually want out of this world? And also,
the world's changed in such a big way.
And we also don't look to the West for the moral compass anymore.
For sure.
We look to the people for it, because we're seeing the people tell the stories. We don't care about the heads of the states.
South Africa is the ultimate representation of that. Like, South Africa taking Israel to the ICJ is actually the global South taking the West to the Moral High Court and to saying, you will no longer lecture me on corruption and what is right and wrong, because you've clearly demonstrated your lack of ability to do what is fair, what is accountable. You don't even live by your own conventions. It's an amazing time.
And we also see it within the US, where they don't have healthcare, but they have money for bombs. They have money for all the other things as well.
I think people are questioning everything. They're questioning that capitalist system.
Yeah.
They're questioning inequality. It is really, I think it was one of the few things that the West still had a edge on, which was this narrative that they are more ethical than other parts of the world. The fact of the matter is, why do we think that somebody committing an attack with a gun or a knife is any less ethical than a drone pilot hitting a bus and killing lots of people? I think that whole prism has been unraveled.
So now you are, I'll say, leading media in the world? Would you say that you are innovate with the innovation of CNTV and having anyone be a journalist? Not anyone, but anyone have the ability to be a journalist. What's the next step for CNTV and for, I'll say, you as well?
We're just getting warmed up. Our objective is to create a more empathetic and understanding world, and we think storytelling is an amazing way to do that. Right now, we're doing that through mobile devices by empowering communities how to tell their own stories and curating it into content. Right? We published over 4,000 videos. We've got 7 million subscribers. And we do like...
The man's got his whole company written, engraved in your mind. Yeah. It's great.
I know what we do.
Yeah.
Where is that going? It's going in 2 very exciting ways. One, we're going to be going a lot more regional. So over the next couple months, and this is the first place I'm sharing this, you're going to start to see the emergence of, for example, Scene South Africa. We're going to be coming into markets where we think there's a huge void. Like, why in South Africa is there no AJ Plus or BuzzFeed or now this? Name me one media publication that focuses on social video where you can access like content on TikTok and Instagram. They don't exist. They're like, come to my website and pay $7.99 behind a paywall and hear content from an old white man. Like, we see a huge opportunity in markets like South Africa. So that's the first thing is just decentralize into regional spaces and tell more stories. And in South Africa, I'm particularly passionate about inequality. I think everyone here thinks they're a victim. But the reality is that some people have got really rough lives and we can all do our part to make it better.
Yeah.
The more exciting thing that you're going to see further down the line is our immersive work. We believe that by 2030, everybody's going to be wearing smart glasses on their faces. The glasses that you're wearing right now will have information on them and you'll be overlaying stories onto the world. We're going to be the world's most immersive storytelling company. We have already done really cool stuff in this space. I must show it to you next time I'm in Cape Town. If you go to the Louis Botha statue outside of Parliament, we've created experiences where you can point your phone at the statue or you can wear glasses and the statue comes to life. It says, I am Louis Botha. I was the first Prime Minister of South Africa. I was an amazing leader. And then the horse wakes up and it's like, "Nah, man, you're racist." And they debate the legacy of the statue.
Wow.
And what's really cool is like South Africa has this whole conversation around like, should we pull down statues? These are colonial bastards who do terrible things to the continent. And we're like, what if we give the statue more context? Because what the statue actually needs is a placard to say, this guy was an asshole and he wasn't pretty good, but let's like, fine, if you want to keep him here, let's just remember him, but remember him for what a terrible human being this was. The beauty of augmented reality, spatial storytelling, immersive storytelling is that you can do that. You can overlay stories onto the world and you don't need anybody's permission. We didn't have to go to the city of Cape Town and be like, hey, can we do this experience? Just use your phone and your glasses, you can scan it, it comes to life. We created another experience. As you know, I'm born and raised Muslim. How much Arabic do you speak?
Not much.
It sucks, right?
Yeah.
Spend your whole life praying in a language you don't understand. What a ridiculous idea. Actually, you're praying in Mandarin or Cantonese. Wouldn't do it.
Yeah.
But we do it in Arabic. We created an experience where I can let you try it on. Try on the glasses and you see the Quran in English and Arabic. So while I'm praying, I understand what I'm praying. So if you ask me where scene TV is going, if you ask me where the future of storytelling is going, it's moving more and more from the phone to the face.
The lived experience, the lived face, I'll say, yeah.
Storytelling is moving onto your face.
But you're going into markets that don't exist. What's the drive? How do you spot something and go, that's where the world can go? Because you have to take them there.
Yeah, it's really hard and expensive because when you are early, it's prohibitively expensive. Like investing in, augmented reality technology and spatial storytelling technology to headsets when nobody has a headset. It's a bet.
Yeah.
I think what people need to understand is you've had a series of like technological jumps when it comes to storytelling. We went from like the printing press to radio. Big jump. Radio to television. Big jump. We got visuals. Yeah. Television to digital. Jump in terms of like on demand. That big jump. Like 16 by 9 on television, 16 by 9 on YouTube. Same thing. This next jump is massive. It's like spatial. It's overlaying stories onto the world. It's immersing oneself in stories. And we realize that there's going to be a whole bunch of like billion-dollar businesses born into that space. And the muscle that you have to develop and grow to be ready for that world, you really have to start tinkering with today. Especially in an industry like media, but to be honest, any industry, to anyone who's watching or listening to this, the world is moving very, very quickly. If you are just spending on the way that you currently do things today and you're not anticipating the way your industry or your audience or your consumer is changing tomorrow, you could very, very quickly become very, very irrelevant. So for me as an individual, if I have like 5 days in a week, at least one of my 5 days, at least 20% of my time is spent on a future that hasn't quite materialized yet, but we're already trying to figure out. At least 20% of my time is like, where is this company going? Where is the industry going? And what skills do I need to learn to be ready for that? And I think the ultimate lesson for anybody listening to this is the greatest singular skill that you can have is the ability to acquire more skills.
To put yourself in spaces where you can just learn more things about more. I'll say more things.
The ability to learn is the singular most valuable ability you have today.
That was actually the next question I was going to ask to the listeners. It's because we're looking for, the podcast is for people who want to learn more, right? But learning always, there's a step that needs, there's an inspiration and a motivation that needs you to get to learning. What do you find that can be that for people?
I think a lot of people aspire to self-determination over their employment, right? Like I was a terrible employee, complete rogue. You say A, if I think B is better, I do B. And I think there's a lot of people that may be feeling the same.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people that feel like they're not unlocking their maximum human potential. And if they were doing something that they enjoy and that they found purpose in and that they were good at and that they owned, they would go all out. Like they're only willing to work 8 hours a day on this because it's not something that's theirs or that they like. But if it was something that they're driven by, oh, they'd go 16 hours a day, right? Kind of like you in comedy.
Yeah.
You dedicate 16 hours a day to comedy because it's your jam and it's your jokes. It's going to make you look good on stage. It's going to get you that Netflix special. So I think if people can connect their learnings to outcomes which liberate them from their current employment or otherwise situation, then that learning becomes a charm, right?
Yeah.
It's like, it's about like visualizing what that end looks like. And for me, I'm wildly excited about this future wearable world. I really believe that we're all going to be wearing glasses. We're not going to be using phones. We're going to overlay internet to the world. And I believe we can use that to create a more empathetic and understanding world. I believe we can immerse ourselves in other people's lives. I believe we can walk a day in somebody's shoes. I believe you can experience what it's like to be a Palestinian going through a checkpoint. I see it. I see all of that. And I see how it can make the world a better place. And I see how if somebody experienced that, they'd donate more money to charity. They'd be like, yo, that hit me so hard in the heart that I want to help wherever I can. So now that I see that goal, the process of the pain in the ass work of learning how to do that, it's worthwhile. Visualize the finish line and the learning becomes easier.
As you're saying this now, it's actually a callback to your first leaders. I feel like you've ever joined you've combined the two main leaders that you've seen of the community and the technology, and now this is so you're going forward with it as well. Of your father's
what I want
technology.
People to really understand though, like people are so afraid to get going because they haven't got it all figured out.
Yeah.
On the outside, we're like, oh wow, what a successful media company! We have 55 staff in the Holstein Film Festival. Inside, we're pooping our pants. Like business models change, revenue streams change. All companies I've ever worked in or built are absolute varying degrees of chaos on the inside. So don't be scared by not having things figured out. And be okay starting something and knowing that it could change 5 times along the way. Our first revenue stream was speeches. So basically, we're a speech business. Then it became training. Now we're training. Then we're a training business. Then it became like selling videos to companies. They're selling videos to companies. Now it's like ad revenue from Facebook and Snapchat. Then with this, tomorrow it's going to be like branded content with like a Mr. Price or a ShopRite. Like it's okay if you haven't got it figured out, and it's okay if it changes along the way. What is important is for the overall leadership vision to be the same.
Yeah,
the vision, the North Star. Like our North Star is we want to create the world's most immersive storytelling company. So we create more empathy and understand. We know that. We want to be immersive. We want to create empathy and understand. How we get there can change and shift and bend all the way. And that's totally okay.
I think that's a great way to begin to end it on that note, because a lot of our people, we feel lost, but if you have an end goal, you'll just keep working towards that.
That's it. Know where you want to go. If you don't know the journey, how to get there, that's fine.
Shukran for your time. You're a very busy man and difficult to get hold of, but we really appreciate you.
Let's smash the Maghreb.
Yes, sir. Inshallah. Guys, that's all we have time for. I'm Yaaseen Barnes.
Yusuf Omar, thank you so much for having me.
Yaaseen TV. This is the Muslims Connected podcast. Assalamu alaikum.
Let's swap lives. I want to share comedy.
Soon.